All right. Good evening again. Again, my name is Kelly Urs. I'm the Wellness Program Manager for the Exercises Medicine Program, and I have the pleasure of being joined by Nick Fields, one of our Exercises Medicine Wellness Specialists, and he's going to be talking tonight with us about setting goals and maintaining motivation. So I'm going to turn it over to Nick. He's going to talk about that and as well as the Exercises Medicine Program. So Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. I'm really excited to get to share with you guys today. Again, it goes without saying, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to put it in the chat or, make a comment, and I'll be happy to get to it. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about setting goals, maintaining motivation. What are the tactics that people like myself, people like Kelly, what do we use to figure out what to tell people to do, and how do we write our own programs? How do we come up with what is exercise? What are we supposed to be doing? So we're going to talk through that. We've got a couple different things that we're talking about. Before we get started, we're just going to talk through exercises medicine. So EIM, exercises medicine are hand in hand the same thing. And so it's a global health initiative. This is across many different states and countries. Where we're a physician referral-based program that is committed to encouraging people into physical activity, regardless of, pre-existing conditions, chronic conditions, those sorts of things. So here at Ohio State, we have an exercises medicine program where we get a physician referral. So your physician can refer you, whether they're an Ohio State physician or an out-of-network physician. We have two different processes for that. It's easier if you have an Ohio State physician, but we can do both. You can always shoot us an email at exercisesmedicine@osumc.edu if you have any questions. But we start with 2 one-on-one sessions. So the first session is a wellness coaching session where we use motivational interviewing, where you'll meet with one of our exercises medicine specialists to talk through your goals and kind of what you want to work on when you're here in the program. Between that session and your second one-on-one session, your wellness coach will come up with an actual routine for you, an actual plan, and you'll go through it during that second session in your personal training session. And then for the next 8 weeks following that personal training session, you'll meet in supervised group sessions where you're doing your own individualized workout twice a week for 8 weeks. So you'll go to 16 different sessions. That's your time to kind of work on the different routines that you've been given, have your exercises medicine specialist there to answer questions for you and kind of figure everything out, and then we finish up with a final one-on-one session. So when we do another set of wellness coaching and motivational interviewing at the end to kind of take all of the good habits and good things that we've started doing in the program and continue them for the long haul. It's a $200 out-of-pocket cost. We're not covered by insurance right now, but $200 to get 19 different sessions with an exercises medicine specialist, I think is pretty worth it. So if you have any questions about the program as a whole, feel free to reach out to us or leave it in the chat. So what are we talking about today? We're going to talk through the readiness for change assessment. So this is something that sets a nice foundation for us as we go through the next things we're going to talk about. We're going to talk through FITT-VP principles, which I'll hit on in a minute. FITT-VP principles are essentially the guiding principles that we as exercise physiologists use to determine, okay, what do we change? What do we work on? How do we get somebody from point A to point B and take those kind of principles and lead them to long-lasting results over time. So the FITT-VP principles, there's 6 different principles that we will work on or that we'll talk about that kind of guide us in our exercise. And then taking that, how do we use these principles to set goals? I think goal setting is a big kind of topic, especially with the time of year that it is. We're coming into the first of the year. Everyone's got their new Year's resolutions. Most of those fall flat, I think, like 3 days into the new year. So we'll talk through the anatomy of a good goal, an anatomy of a goal that's going to stick around and work, rather than just throwing it out there and being disappointed when it doesn't happen. So we're going to start with the readiness for change assessment. So the trans-theoretical model of behavioral change sounds really kind of fancy. It's really not. Essentially, what it does is assesses where are we in regards to our readiness for change, or the chance that we are going to actually make a change. So There's 5 different stages. The first being pre-contemplation, meaning I'm not even thinking about it, right? I have no reason, if we were using exercise as an example, I have nothing, I'm not even considering that exercise might be beneficial to me. Contemplation might be, hey, I've heard that exercise is beneficial for me. Maybe I could try to do it. I don't know, I've never really tried, but I think I'm at least open to the idea that it could be beneficial. Then we have preparation. So preparation is when you decide, okay, I want to do this, right? I need to figure out the things to do in order to make something like this happen. The preparation phase is often where we end up when we're doing those initial 2 appointments in exercises medicine. We're trying to figure out, okay, what are the things that we need to know and that we need to be informed of as we're starting an exercise program, or maybe becoming reinterested in exercise, and how do we make goals and make changes to get to our goals. Our action stages, hey, that's when we're doing it, right? Oftentimes that's the first kind of 6 months window is what we generally say is the action phase, taking it from point A to point B and getting us to a place where we feel good about where we're at and where we're able to make consistent changes and routines over time. And then the maintenance phase is exactly that. Is when we feel like we have the tools and the things that we need in order to continue to make changes over time. Starting with figuring out where we are on the spectrum is a huge important thing. Chances are, if you're listening to a webinar like this, you might be in that contemplation phase or further beyond there. I think by definition that you would tune into something like this, that you'd be at least thinking about it and thinking about, hey, this could be something that would benefit me. As we move through these stages, the number one most important thing that we see across the board for people who are doing better and are making improvements with exercise is self-efficacy. Self-efficacy, meaning the ability or my own belief in my ability to do it. Without that, we have a really hard time getting going. And so moving through these stages naturally is going to increase our self-efficacy. We go from not thinking about it to thinking about it, thinking about it to, thinking about how to do it, thinking about how to do it to actually doing it, and then going from actually doing it to making this a part of my daily life. All throughout that, you're going to feel better about, what you're doing, how you're doing, knowing what you're doing, that kind of thing. Okay, when we talk about our FITT-VP principles, I'm giving them away right here. So FITT-VP stands for frequency, intensity, time, type, volume, and progression. Essentially, these are the little knobs, the little levers that we can change, right? I think if you think about like a DJ is going to turn up one little thing that's going to make the whole song sound different. That's exactly kind of what we're working on here. Someone like myself, an exercise physiologist or an exercises medicine specialist, might dial in on one of these, kind of specific principles and work on manipulating that over time. And we expect certain different changes to happen based on which ones that we talk through. So I'm going to talk through each one of these different principles, and we'll kind of get an idea as to where are you, kind of what sorts of things do you feel like you would benefit from looking at, and then that last little point there. A healthy, balance between every single one of these is really important. Like if we have the frequency, intensity, the time, the type, and the volume down, but we have no progression, right? Then we stay the same. We don't really change. But if we don't ever change our intensity, and intensity stays the exact same the whole time, and it's way too high, chances are we're going to burn ourselves out. Or if it's way too low, chances are we're going to feel like we're not doing anything. So making slight changes to all of these over time is really important. And we'll talk through kind of how to do that here in a second. Okay, we're going to head right into frequency. So frequency refers to how often we're exercising. So, oftentimes we look at weeks in exercise physiology. We talk about, okay, how much are you doing per week? Is that frequency just refers to the number of sessions that you're doing. Is that twice a week? Is that 3 times a week? Is that 7 times a week? The thing that this is usually the metric that I start with, right? If we've got plans to go from 0 to hero, but we're starting with 0, chances are we want to increase our frequency before we touch anything else, right? So we want to get to a place where we feel comfortable going in and moving, right? Where we feel like our body's getting used to going and doing those sorts of things. Starting with around 2 to 3 times a week, totally depending on you, but that's kind of where I see people starting on average. This is kind of an example here. Like this is an example of someone who has never exercised before. The first thing that I usually prioritize is increasing the amount of sessions that they're having in a week. So what that might mean is 5-minute walks, right? Or 3 20-minute walks, as opposed to doing nothing, rather than having one 3-hour walk or one 30-minute walk that's going to feel like a lot, right? This is a really great way to manage the load and the strain that's put on our body at a time by spreading those out over time. I always say, this is like my participants in my classes will laugh because they hear me say this all the time. I would rather take a C average workout 3 times a week for 6 months than 4 A+ workouts that put you down and make you really, really sore. Even though it might be an amazing workout, if we were to actually count up how much we're doing over those 6 months, it's going to be a whole lot more beneficial to get that C grade, right? As opposed to, this A+ NFL combine ready workout. So frequency is a great way to kind of look at that. The next one that we have, intensity. Intensity is exactly what it sounds like. It's the relative difficulty of the exercise that we're doing. Generally, we use the RPE scale, which stands for the rate of perceived exertion. This is a great tool to kind of to gauge your own intensity. So we use a 1 to 10 scale. You also might see, if you're doing cardiac rehab or pulmonary rehab, you'll see a 6 to 20 scale. We use that in order to correspond to your heart rate, funny enough. But RPE 1 to 10 is more universal, almost like a pain scale. Hopefully not a ton of pain. But keep, as far as intensity goes, when we're getting started, that 4 to 7 kind of, we would call that like moderate difficulty, is a great place to start. How I always refer, the kind of rule of thumb I use for that, if we're looking at repetitions in a set, and if we're gauging for 10 to 12 reps, I always say a set between a 7 and a 10 means if I finish 12, right, I could not do 20. 20 would be too much. 15, I could probably get it, but it would be a push, and I have no problem getting to the 10 or 12. Right. So that's kind of a litmus test. And if you can't get to 10 or 12, that means it's a little bit too intense. We're using too much effort there. But yeah, starting between a 4 and a 7 is a really good mode as we manipulate your intensity, which we talked about in the previous slide. You may have heard this before. This is kind of a popular thing coming out recently, the 80-20 rule, meaning that even when we get to the point where we're manipulating our intensity relatively regularly, especially relative to your cardiovascular training, 80% of the work that you're doing should be at an easy pace, right? So like between anywhere from 5 to 6, like 3 to 6 RPE, whereas so probably a little bit easier than you would imagine. Whereas that 20%, that last little bit, we're going to go a whole lot harder than we would possibly that we would normally probably start with. So 80% easy, 20% difficult. That's that 80-20 rule that kind of prioritizes or is shown to prioritize aerobic health and aerobic progress. So that's a great place to start. There's a book called the 80-20 rule. If you're interested more in that, I would highly recommend it. It's very cool. And again, that last point there, intensity is a lower priority relative to frequency. If we're getting started, frequency is the thing that we need to be looking at. All right. When it comes to time is simply a measure of how long you can tolerate exercise. I don't know why there's a question mark there, but that's okay. As far as time goals go, a great place to start is our ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine weekly guidelines. So we say 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity activity. Again, that's that RPE of about 4 to 7-ish. That could be, considered like a brisk walk. So a walk where you could go out and you could have a conversation the whole time throughout, but you're also not just on a leisurely walk, kind of that in between. 150 minutes a week, that's broken down into 5 sessions of about 30 minutes. If we bump that up to the moderate intensity, going pretty hard, maybe jogging or riding a bike, a little bit more intensely, we back that down to 75 minutes. So 2 minutes of moderate intensity equals 1 minute of vigorous intensity. That's a great place to start when we talk for time. I almost never, obviously we can do a whole lot more than 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity in a week, and in the cardiovascular setting. I tend not to overshoot that goal by too much if we're not already there. That's the first place that we start. And so getting there is a really great place to start. And then the other component of that American College of Sports Medicine weekly guideline is 2 resistance training sessions per week. So that is, again, similar RPE, that 4 to 7 RPE, and then working 2 kind of total body resistance training sessions per week is the other component. So working to get to those first. Time, is again, a helpful method for increasing self-efficacy. So the more that we're doing it, the more used to it that we are becoming, the easier it is for us to go back and do it again. So that helps to really increase the self-efficacy. In other words, the ability, the belief in our own ability to do it, and confidence in an exercise setting. It's no secret. Like we don't all feel like we can just go hop into any commercial gym and figure ourselves out, right? And so working on increasing the time that you're able to tolerate, if that's something that maybe scares you or that you feel uneasy about, increasing the time that you're in a space like that can be a great way to improve your comfortability and confidence in that kind of setting. Type. Yeah, this is, hey, what are we doing, right? Keeping it fun, keeping it new, changing things up. You don't have to just go walk on a 3 mile an hour treadmill, 15% incline for 30 minutes every day. That's great. That will work. However, that's not going to, I go do that for 6 months and tell me you don't hate the treadmill. You might. I would hate that. And I think, changing it up, doing different things, going outside, right? Changing up the kind of things that you're doing are great. I'm a huge proponent of working with someone like an EIM specialist or a personal trainer, doing programs or having some slight maybe even periodic touch-ins with a personal trainer can be a great way to keep it new, keep it interesting, get new routines, try new things out. As well as, depending on what your thoughts are about the wild world of social media, take it or leave it. There's lots of awesome things that you can find, there for new things to work on. So, switching up your type is always going to be a good thing. I would say with the exception of right at the beginning, generally there's some adaptations that your body's making, especially as we're starting some new exercise. So I wouldn't change it up all that much and give your body something completely different. But, within a few weeks of getting ready, I think, or getting started, I think switching up the type and the kind of things that you're doing can be beneficial if you're someone who's prone to getting bored pretty quickly. And then lastly building your exercise vocabulary. This is a term that I use all the time. How I describe your exercise vocabulary. Let's say you're in that action phase, right? That action phase of our trans theoretical model where you want to be doing it or you're doing it, right? And I really have the desire to go do it. I need to know that I have options when I go do something, right? It's almost like if you had something that you really wanted to say, but you just didn't know the word for it. Knowing the word for it, building your vocabulary helps you be able to communicate the thing that you're trying to say. And so exercise, I look at it in the exact same way. Building your exercise vocabulary over time, meaning, okay, I know I want to go do something. What can I go do with when I do it? So, working with an EIM specialist, personal trainer, et cetera, can be a great way to do that. And just kind of build up that library of things that you know how to do, that you feel confident doing, and that you can repeat over time. Volume. So volume generally is a product of intensity and time. So intensity meaning how difficult is it? Time is the amount of time that we're spending there. So we can adjust either one of those components there to adjust our overall volume. Increasing your volume over time helps us to work towards a progressive overload. Progressive overload is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. We're slowly giving our body more and more over time so that it learns to have to adapt, build muscle, increase your cardiovascular abilities, your VO2 max, all that sorts of thing. Working with slowly increasing your volume over time is a great way to teach your body to maintain your health, and also increase what you're able to do in an exercise capacity. So and then a rule of thumb as far as volume goes, we try not to increase our volume by more than 10% week over week. So that would be if you're on the treadmill, if you're doing a certain amount of weight, if you're doing 15 pounds, I wouldn't jump to 20 pounds next week, right? Maybe somewhere in the middle. 10% 10% week over week. Obviously not an exact science, but that's a general rule of thumb. No doubling in a week. I would say that's not going to be the best way to do it. Make you more subject to injury. Your body's going to be a little bit more stressed than it's necessary, that sort of thing. Once you feel like you have a pretty solid, routine down, I usually try to recommend picking up, a Garmin, I'm wearing one right now, or an Apple Fitness watch or a Fitbit or something like that. Even a Strava, which is like basically a exercise social media. Those things, a lot of those have really great software that will help you track your volume, how much have you done over time, and it'll show you, Strava has an awesome graph that will show you week over week, what are you doing, how much have you done, how much time have you done, how many miles have you done, that kind of thing, so that you can monitor that and manage that and try not to overwork yourself. Okay, last one, progression, long-term plan. So this is figuring out, okay, like I said right at the beginning here, like if we have our FITT-V down, but our progression doesn't change, we're not going to make any changes, right? So working on progression is essentially how do we manipulate the first 5 variables to work towards things over the long time. So long-term plan, long-term goals, and I always recommend a called backwards planning, which is essentially, okay, I know where I want to be, right? What is one step back from where I want to be? What's one step back from that? What's one step back from that until I get to where I am now? And then all of a sudden you have a nice, theoretical plan walking you exactly where you want to be. So that where I want to be informs me how I should start. Which helps to build a healthy and achievable program. So if I know, let's say I'm 200 pounds or 250 pounds or something like that, and I want to be 150, that doesn't mean I immediately set out to, be 150 pounds. Maybe I start by losing 5 pounds, that sort of thing. And again, this kind of thing, there's lots of different strategies and things that you can do as far as manipulating your progressions through manipulating the first 5 kind of components that we talked about, and can be made a little bit more attainable and easier by working with an exercise specialist, health coach, dietitian, nutritionist, physician, even personal trainer, physical therapist, many different people who will kind of help you give some ideas to get through this kind of thing. Okay, so we made it through FITT-VP, a lot of talking. Now, what do we do with that, right? We need to set some goals. So setting weekly goals, coming out, with figuring out what do we want to do. I think that's a great place to start. In order to get to where we end up, we need to start with where we are right now. When it comes to setting goals, you see that there, best to have 3 or more goals in 2 to 3 areas. So fitness, nutrition, weight management. If every single one of our goals is in weight management, right? Okay, I want to lose 5 pounds. I really want to lose 5 pounds. If I don't lose 5 pounds, I'm not going to do it. Okay, what are you going to do in order to get yourself to 5 pounds? Because just thinking about losing 5 pounds is not going to do anything. But actually putting the plans in place to make that happen is what's going to lead to lasting change over time. So figuring out, multiple different goals are really important. When we talk about goals, this is kind of the anatomy of a good goal, a SMART goal. You may have heard this before. SMART goals are specific. They talk directly about something. They're measurable, right? We use numbers. We use some sort of metric, some sort of ability to gauge where we are. They have to be achievable, right? I could really say I want to go, I don't even know. I want to go run a sub 2-hour marathon, but no one's ever done that, right? That would be a crazy goal for me to make right off the bat. But those achievable goals should also be challenging. Not I want to go stand up out of this chair right now. I'm going to be able to do that, right? It's not really going to motivate me at all. SMART goals should be relevant. So let's keep them, relevant to what we're doing. And then time-based. So have an idea as to how long you want to accomplish that in. So I think we've got some examples here. So I will walk. So that's what I'm going to do on the treadmill. That's where I'm going to do it for at least 20 minutes or greater than 20 minutes 3 times this week. That's a great SMART goal. I will make a grocery list and shop on Saturday morning for 2 healthy snacks per day for the next week, right? As opposed to, hey, I'm going to try to eat healthier this week. That's great. Everyone would like to do that, right? But how are you going to do that? That's a great place to start. And so figuring out, where you are on the trans theoretical model kind of spectrum. Are you in pre-contemplation? Are you in contemplation? Are you in preparation, action, maintenance? Where are you? Figuring that out is a great place to start. And then, thinking through your long-term goals, I think, is really important. I will run long term, right? 6 months down the road, I will run on the treadmill 3 days a week, and once outdoors for 30 minutes. That is, 120 minutes or 2 hours of running. That's a lot of running, right? And if we haven't started there, chances are we're not going to be able to do that. But if that's our ultimate goal, that's a great long-term goal. And kind of having some the ideal should only be set for our long term. The short term, when we set our ideal, our perfect scenario for the short term, it leads us to feeling exhausted, discouraged. Our self-efficacy goes down, and our chances that we're going to adhere to that go down as well. So, okay. And then short-term goals, that's a great place to start. That's what I highly recommend. I will run on the woods on Saturday morning. I will grocery shop for my fruits on Sunday. I will weigh myself at the fitness center on Wednesday. That's a great one. I will download Headspace meditation app on Monday. Starting with, okay, great. I have these awesome long-term goals. What can I do today to put myself closer to that goal? That's a great place to start. Using those SMART goals, making those goals specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely is the best way to start. And then adjusting your FITT-VP principles, which are your frequency, intensity, time, type, volume, and progression, are all great ways to start. And that's what, if you're working with a fitness professional, hopefully, especially if you're at Exercises Medicine, that's what we're thinking about as we get you started. And as you get started, that's what you should be thinking about as well. I think I have some time for any questions. If anyone has anything that they're curious about, or, just kind of any generalized questions, now is the time. Ooh, let's go back here.
Put those questions in the chat. Thank you very much, Nick. That's great information, and hopefully you can take that information and everything about the FITT principles and put it into practice with your health and wellness goals. So we'll wrap it up here. Just kind of waiting to see if there are any questions in there. I hope you'll join us all next month. We're going to be joined by Eric Colombo, one of our weight management dietitians, and Dr. Catherine Feister, a licensed counselor and health coach with the weight management programs. They'll both together be talking about navigating healthy meals and stress management around the holidays. So hopefully you'll join us on the first Tuesday of December for that. If you're registered for this session, your registration will be for the next 14 sessions. So you can use the same link to get into the meeting or into the webinar next month as well. So if there are no questions, again, thank you, Nick, for your time and your expertise and sharing some great information. We do have a question. Thank you, Stephanie. Any recommendations on starting exercise with a busy daily schedule?
Absolutely. Busy is it's a heck of a way to do it. What I usually recommend, kind of, as I would say, let's start with breaking it up into little chunks, right? Our kind of, especially for our cardiovascular kind of space, the minimum that we kind of want to be able to do and get a benefit from is around 10 minutes. That's what the research shows. So we want to be able to hit that 10-minute mark. But once you hit that 10-minute mark, you're getting some significant cardiovascular benefits. And so breaking it up, you don't have to go out and do an hour, right? You don't have to go out and do 5 hours, right? I think that we oftentimes start with these lofty goals of the ideal, kind of what I was talking about. Let's not start with the ideal. Let's start with, okay, what can I do now? Can I do 10 minutes in the, before I go to work and when I get home, or, when I drop the kids off or something like that. I would start with that, break it up into short little 10-minute bursts, minimum of 10 minutes, I would say, as far as, cardiovascular exercise goes. And then when it comes to strength training, I would say that becomes a little bit looser, trying to work on kind of that overload where you start to feel like a little bit of a burn, or maybe even just some like mental kind of relief from, the stress of a busy daily schedule. Hopefully that gives you some ideas. And if you have any other questions, let me know.
All right. If any other questions come in, we can email you with some responses. I did put the Exercises Medicine email in the chat. So if you have any questions for us, you can send those there. So again, thank you for coming out this evening. Thank you again, Nick. And we hope to see you all in December.
Thanks, everybody.